The villagers of Sereth once whispered of a boy born under a cursed star. That boy was Kale. Kale had no known family, no ancestral home, and no memory of a gentle childhood. As a baby, he was found wrapped in a blood-soaked cloth, abandoned at the steps of a crumbling shrine just outside the village. The priest who discovered him died the following winter, his body found frozen with a look of terror on his face. Since then, the villagers kept their distance. Kale grew up under the roof of an old beggar woman, Myra, who took him in out of pity rather than affection. She fed him scraps, taught him to hide from bullies, and warned him never to look anyone in the eye. "You're different," she said. "And people fear what they don't understand." By the time Kale turned 10, he had begun to notice strange things. The shadows around him moved unnaturally at dusk. Animals would halt mid-stride and stare at him. Once, when cornered by local thugs, Kale screamed and the ground beneath them cracked like dry glass, sending them fleeing in terror. The villagers branded him a demon. Children were forbidden to speak to him. Market stalls refused to serve him. And yet, something in Kale remained unbroken. Each night, he would sit beneath the shrine that had once been his cradle and stare at the stars, wondering why the world had rejected him so violently. One day, a wanderer entered Sereth. Clad in tattered robes and a blindfold, the man introduced himself only as a render. He carried no weapon, yet walked with the presence of a warlord. When he passed Kale in the square, he stopped abruptly and turned toward him, despite the cloth over his eyes. "You have seen the abyss," a render whispered. "And the abyss has looked back." Kale was frozen. It was the first time someone had spoken to him without malice or disgust. That evening, a render sought out Kale and offered him a choice. "Come with me. Leave this village behind. I can teach you how to wield the storm inside you, or you can remain here and rot in their fear." Kale didn't hesitate. With nothing to lose, he followed the stranger out into the forest before dawn. He didn't even look back. What followed were years of brutal training in the lost arts of Veilborn, a forgotten martial tradition said to have been erased from the world after the cataclysm. Under Arinder's tutelage, Kale was broken and rebuilt, again and again. He learned how to bend his fear into willpower, how to control his breath until it mimicked the silence of death, and how to draw upon an ancient force called the Veil, a mysterious energy that danced between light and shadow. But the training was not kind. Each lesson was a near-death experience. He bled. He wept. He screamed. And yet, he endured. For every ounce of pain, there was power. Power he had never known he possessed. By the time he reached 17, Kale was no longer the trembling child of Sereth. He had grown tall, lean, with eyes like burning coals and movements as silent as drifting smoke. He could summon flickers of energy that seared through stone. His shadow moved even when he stood still. But Arinder, though proud, remained cold. "You are not ready," he would say. "Not yet." Kale had grown impatient. He wanted to know why he had been abandoned. Why the world seemed to recoil at his presence. Why the veil responded to him so fiercely. One stormy night, he confronted Arinder, demanding answers. The blindfolded master paused, as if weighing a great burden. There is a reason the world tried to forget Valen, he said slowly. Because your kind nearly ended it? Kale stepped back, his pulse quickening. What do you mean, my kind? Arinder sighed. You are what they once called the Hollowborn. Descendants of those who survived the Sundering, when the veil first bled into our realm. You were never meant to exist, Kale. But fate defied that order. Lightning split the sky. I trained you not because I wished to, but because the veil chose you. And now, others have sensed it too. That very night, assassins struck. Men cloaked in obsidian armor and bearing the insignia of a forgotten sigil, the serpent of the black coil, descended upon their mountain retreat. Arinder fought like a god of war, his movements slicing wind and fire alike. But he was old. Slower than he once had been. Kale, in a moment of fury and terror, unleashed a wave of veil energy so potent it shattered stone and sent the attackers fleeing into the night. But the damage was done. Arinder lay dying. With his final breath, he gripped Kale's wrist and whispered, "Find the Temple of Sarith. Learn what they stole from you. And when the time comes, don't run from the darkness. Become it." Then he was gone. As dawn rose, Kale stood amidst the ruins of his only home, the first embers of vengeance kindling in his chest. The world had tried to erase him. Now, it would remember. He wrapped Arinder's blindfold around his own eyes. The path of shadows had begun. Kale wandered the broken highlands for days, wearing the blindfold once worn by his master. The world around him was sound, wind, and scent. Without sight, his other senses grew sharper. The path before him was unclear, but his purpose was not. He must find the Temple of Sarith. The name pulsed like an echo in his mind, the final words of a dying man etched into his soul. Arinder had never mentioned it before. Kale didn't even know if the temple still stood. But something within the veil, the strange force he barely understood, urged him forward, whispering through every gust of wind and shifting leaf. On the fifth day, Kale crossed into the lowlands of Thalera, a land forgotten by maps and feared by cartographers. The soil was black, as if scorched by ancient fire. The trees groaned with memories. In the distance, the silhouette of crumbling spires clawed at the sky. As he approached a nearby village barely more than a cluster of ruins and shacks, a strange sound pierced the air. Screaming. Kale moved. His body blurred into shadow as he sprinted toward the source. From a nearby ridge, he spotted a group of bandits in rusted armor dragging a young woman toward a shattered stone monument. Behind her, an older man lay motionless in a pool of blood. Without thinking, Kale leapt from the ridge, landing with a force that cracked the earth. The bandits turned, startled, but it was too late. Veil energy erupted from Kale's palms, twisting into black tendrils that lashed the air like whips. One bandit flew backward, slammed against a tree with bone-shattering force. Another tried to flee, only to have his path cut by Kale's shadow literally. The dark silhouette sprang up like a creature alive, slicing across his throat. The last man begged for mercy. Kale said nothing. He let the veil speak for him. By the time it was over, only the girl remained. She looked at him, wide-eyed, and whispered, "You're not human, are you?" Kale removed his blindfold. His eyes glowed faintly, veins of silvery blue light pulsing beneath his skin. "That depends," he said softly. "On who you ask." Her name was Lyra. She was a scribe from the fallen archives of Narrated, fleeing mercenaries who had raided the old vaults in search of forbidden tomes. The man beside her, her father, had been their last protector. Lyra, despite her youth, spoke of ancient knowledge, of maps carved on whale bones, of whispers about a place called Sirith buried in her father's final writings. "It was a sanctuary once," she said. "Then, a prison. Now, maybe, just a myth." Kale listened intently. For the first time, he had a companion. Someone who didn't flinch at his power. Someone who knew more. He buried her father with his own hands. That night, as they camped beneath the ruined monument, Kale dreamt. He stood in an ocean of mist. A tower rose in the distance, bound by serpents of smoke. Voices called to him not in words, but in echoes: pain, betrayal, sacrifice. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the fog, a woman clad in silver armor, her eyes hollow, her voice like thunder. "You carry the blood of the Hollowborn, Kale of the Veil. You are not the last, but you may be the first to choose." Kale awoke, drenched in sweat. And in the darkness, across the firelight, Lyra stared at him. "I saw it too," she said. "The tower. The serpents. They were linked. Not just by fate, but by something deeper, perhaps something neither of them could yet understand." The next morning, they set out together. South, toward the cliffs of Illyrian, where legend claimed the entrance to Sirith had been sealed 1,000 years ago by gods who feared what slept beneath. But they were not alone. High above, a creature of smoke and ash watched them from the treetops. It bore no eyes, no face, but it whispered names in a language forgotten by men. Its master, cloaked in crimson robes far to the east, opened a scroll upon which Kale's name burned in ink made of blood. "The Hollowborn walks the earth again," the master hissed. "Let the hunt begin." Kale's journey had only just begun, and already, the darkness stirred. What secrets would the Temple of Sirith reveal? What did it mean to be Hollowborn? And could a boy born in ashes rise to become a flame the world could not extinguish? For 3 days and nights, Kale and Lyra journeyed through the haunted expanse of the Illyrian cliffs, where the sky seemed eternally gray and the wind carried voices that didn't belong to the living. The path to the temple of Sirith, if it still existed, was lost among legends of vanished gods and forbidden rites. Each night, Kale's dreams grew darker. He saw flashes of the past cities crumbling in shadow, towers swallowed by fire, children crying out as the veil consumed the sky like a living storm. And always, the same voice whispered, "It is not power that defines you. It is what you become when power asks for a price." Lyra, too, began to change. Since the night they shared the same dream, something within her had stirred. She began to understand Kale's words before he spoke them. She could touch certain stones or runes and see glimpses of history. She confessed that her family had once been wardens, keepers of forbidden knowledge, protectors of the veil's balance. "Maybe that's why my blood called to yours," she said one night, as they sheltered in a broken watchtower, surrounded by the bones of time. Kale didn't answer. He felt the call too. But he feared it. The descent begins. On the fourth morning, they found it. Hidden behind a false cliff face, triggered by a sequence of tones played on an ancient chime Lyra recovered from her father's satchel, the entrance to the temple of Sirith groaned open. A circular archway carved in obsidian stone slowly unfurled like petals blooming in reverse. The air beyond was heavy with magic. Old magic. Hungry magic. Kale stepped forward first. "If the legends are true," he said, "then what lies beneath is older than the kingdoms. Older than gods." Lyra touched his arm. "And it might be waiting for you." They descended. Down a spiral stair of floating steps that hung above an abyss of stars. Gravity bent. Time stretched. Kale's vision blurred, but the veil around him stabilized. It was like the temple knew him. Welcomed him. At the bottom, they entered a vast chamber, walls etched with shifting runes, a dome above that flickered with constellations not seen in the mortal sky. At the center stood a massive circular gate 12 meters high, sealed by 6 stone locks, each pulsing faintly. As they approached, a figure emerged from the shadows. He was robed in gold and crimson, his eyes pitch black, his breath steaming in the cold air. A black serpent coiled around his arm. "I've been expecting you, Kale." Kale braced, shadows coiling around his hands. The stranger raised a hand. "Easy. I am Veiler, last of the Crimson Keepers. I guard what lies beyond this gate, not from you, but from those who would use it without understanding." Lyra stepped forward. "What lies beyond it?" Veiler turned to her. "Truth." He waved a hand, and the 6 locks lit with eerie light. "This gate seals the heart of the veil. A fragment of the force that split the world in two during the sundering. To open it, you must prove your will." Kale narrowed his eyes. "And what happens when it opens?" Veiler smiled grimly. You either become what you were meant to be, or you die. The Trial of Shadows. Before Kale could protest, the floor beneath him collapsed into darkness. Lyra screamed, but Violer caught her. This is his trial. If he is to survive, he must face it alone. Kale landed not on stone but on water. He was in a void. Above him, stars twisted unnaturally. Around him, mirror-like water stretched endlessly. Then, reflections began to rise, copies of himself, each twisted by different emotions: rage, fear, grief, arrogance. They attacked. Each version wielded a piece of his past. The boy who cried alone. The teen who bled in training. The man who killed without mercy. Kale fought, not with fists, but with resolve. "I am not your slave," he shouted at them. "I carry you, but I choose who I become." One by one, the reflections shattered until the last remained. A version of Kale fully consumed by the veil, a hollow god with eyes of infinite night. "You don't fear the darkness," the shadow hissed. "You fear you are already it." Kale stepped forward, face to face with his worst self, and embraced him. The shadow screamed and dissolved into light. Awakening. Kale rose from the trial, changed. Veil energy shimmered faintly around him, not like a storm but like armor. Controlled. Balanced. When he opened his eyes, they no longer burned, they glowed steady, like moonlight on still water. Violer bowed. "The gate will now answer to you." Lyra rushed to Kale, tears in her eyes. "I thought I lost you." He smiled faintly. "You never will." Together, they stood before the gate. As Kale reached out, the locks turned. The runes flared. The chamber shook. And beyond the gate, something stirred, a pulse, deep and ancient. The heart of the veil was waking. In the distance, in a fortress of iron and bone, a hooded figure stared into a mirror of blood. The image of Kale flickered across its surface. So, the heir survives. He turned to an army of shadows waiting in silence. "Then we march for Sarith." The gates of Sarith parted with the sound of shifting worlds. A pulse rolled through the stone chamber, low and ancient, like the breath of something that had been sleeping for millennia. As the massive stone slabs pulled away, Kale stepped forward, veil light dancing faintly across his skin. Beside him, Lyra clutched her satchel, her breath caught between awe and fear. Violer, guardian of the threshold, bowed once and spoke no words. His duty was complete. Beyond the gate lay a corridor carved from obsidian and bone, its walls etched with symbols older than any language. The path curved downward into the dark, but the air wasn't stale, it shimmered with energy, alive and vibrating, as if the temple itself were watching. Lyra whispered, "I feel time folding here." Kale nodded. This place isn't buried in the earth. It's buried in reality. The heart chamber. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a vast underground hollow, a cavern larger than any city Kale had ever known. Floating platforms hovered across a void of blue mist. And at the center, suspended in an orb of fractured light, beat a massive crystal heart. It pulsed once every few seconds, each beat sending waves of veil energy through the cavern. Around it floated ancient machinery, rings of gold and stone, runes spinning in slow orbits. "This is it," Lyra said breathlessly. "The heart of the veil." Kale stepped closer, the power pulling at his own. The heart was not a thing to be claimed, it was a living force. A remnant of the sundering, when the realms of spirit and matter had collided. It had been hidden here by the first Hollowborn Kale's ancestors. As he neared, images flooded his mind: burning skies, falling cities, titanic beings of light and shadow clashing across shattered continents. The world had almost ended, and this was the reason why. And yet, it called to him. "Child of Ash, son of broken lines, you seek truth, but truth is not safe. Truth is change." The bonding. Kale reached out. The moment his fingers touched the shimmering field, the heart flared and veil energy surged into him, overwhelming and endless. His body convulsed. Runes burned across his skin. The veil screamed through every nerve, showing him not just what had been, but what could be. A vision struck like a storm. Kale stood upon a blackened battlefield. Around him lay the bodies of those he loved, Lyra among them. Above, a tower of unholy light pierced the clouds. And in its heart stood a mirror, with Kale's face upon it, but his eyes empty. Hollow. You will either master the veil, or become its puppet. The power snapped back into the heart, leaving Kale gasping. He had not been consumed, but he had not conquered it either. Lyra rushed to his side. "Are you?" Kale opened his eyes. They now shimmered with streaks of violet and silver. His voice, when he spoke, sounded deeper, layered. "I saw the end. And it begins soon." The return to the surface. The heart slowly dimmed behind them. It would slumber once more, but Kale knew it was now bound to him. Not owned. Not controlled. But linked. As they emerged from the temple, night had fallen. Violer was gone. And waiting at the cliff's edge was a stranger. Tall, dressed in deep blue armor that shimmered like oil, with a single blade floating beside him, untouched by his hand. His voice was smooth as silk, yet cold as death. "You've awakened the pulse. How bold." Kale's stance shifted. "Who are you?" "I am the Ryan, voice of the coil. And you, Hollowborn, are a mistake we've waited centuries to erase." The duel on the cliffs. The air turned electric. The Ryan flicked a hand, and the floating sword shot forward like a bullet. Cale barely dodged, spinning with the help of a veil burst, shadows bursting behind him. Lyra whispered a warding rune under her breath, creating a shield of glowing glyphs that blocked the Ryan's next strike. But the voice was no ordinary warrior. He moved through space like water, bending light and form. Cale countered with twin slashes of condensed veil energy. The ground cracked. Trees were uprooted. Wind howled as magic collided. The Ryan smirked. "You fight like a godling. But I have served gods." He unleashed a torrent of serpentine shadows, which hissed and writhed toward Cale. At the last moment, Cale tapped into the bond with the heart, summoning a wave of brilliant light that split the shadows in half. The Ryan staggered. It was enough. Cale lunged not to kill, but to mark. He touched the Ryan's shoulder with his veil-wrapped palm and whispered a glyph of binding. The mark sizzled into the Ryan's armor. The voice snarled. "You've made enemies you don't understand, Cale of the Veil." Cale replied, "Then let them come." With a flare of smoke, the Ryan vanished. A moment of quiet. Lyra tended to Cale's wounds beneath a starless sky. The ground still trembled with remnants of the duel. They both knew it was only the beginning. "I think we've crossed a line," Lyra murmured. "The world will feel this." Cale nodded. "Then we make sure it survives it." They looked up, and for the first time in centuries, a faint light pulsed across the heavens. The veil was shifting. Watching. Waiting. Cale had touched the heart. Now, the world would change. 3 nights had passed since the clash on the cliffs of Serith. The mark Cale had burned into the Ryan's armor still pulsed faintly in his memory, like a whisper echoing through his veins. They traveled eastward, following the broken ley lines etched faintly into the earth veil currents invisible to most, but now clear to Cale as radiant threads stretching across the land. Lyra had crafted a makeshift map from her father's notes, tracing them by starlight and instinct. But the land was changing. Villages were silent. Forests, once vibrant, stood dead and still. Rivers shimmered with oil-slick colors. Something was poisoning the world from underneath, corruption blooming in silence. Cale could feel it too. The deeper they traveled, the more the veil around him strained. It didn't resist him. It warned him. At night, he dreamt of the coil. Serpent-like shadows coiling around temples. Ancient cities drowning in darkness. And always at the center, a throne made of glass and bone, where a child with his face sat. Smiling. The fallen city of Dareth. On the 6th day, they arrived at the ruins of Dareth. Once a shining archive of knowledge, it now lay in crumbled silence, towers snapped like twigs, books scattered and rotted by rain, statues of ancient wardens defaced. But something moved among the rubble. Kale signaled Lyra to stay low. From a broken observatory tower, they watched. A procession of dark-robed figures circled a central pit. At the center, a massive obsidian serpent curled around a floating platform where a man knelt, chains of flame binding his arms. Lyra gasped. That's Master Tavan. He trained with my father. He's a warden. But the serpent didn't wait for pleas. Its tail slammed into the platform, and from the pit, something crawled upward. Not a beast. Not human. A twisted veil wraith, a creature born from corrupted magic. Its mouth opened wider than any living jaw should, and it consumed Tavan whole. Lyra turned away, trembling. Kale's fists clenched. This was no mere cult. The coil was awakening ancient evils. One of the robed figures stepped forward. Kale recognized the voice immediately. We purge the old wardens to make room for truth. The veil does not serve us. It is us. The Ryan. Still alive. Still watching. The betrayer among them. That night, they crept into the ruins, searching for surviving tomes. Inside a fractured library vault, Lyra uncovered a sealed scroll sealed with two intersecting serpents, the mark of the serpent oath. When opened, it hissed. The scroll revealed something impossible, a list of names, those marked by fate to be Hollowborn. Kale's name was there. So was another. Lyra Valen. Kale stared. This can't be right. Lyra backed away slowly, color draining from her face. I didn't know. I swear it. The shadows in the vault stirred. From behind a shattered pillar, a blade struck, aimed at Kale's neck. He ducked, spun, and unleashed a veil burst that shattered stone. A man stepped forward. Young. Blonde. Eyes like stormlight. Kale froze. Joran. Joran, his brother in training. A boy who had vanished 5 years ago, presumed dead during a failed mission. But now, he stood robed in the sigils of the coil. You were always stronger, Joran said coldly. But I understood something you never did. Power doesn't belong to those who resist it. It belongs to those who embrace it. You joined them. I became more than a forgotten orphan, Joran hissed. I became the heir of the second coil. The battle in the vault. Kale didn't hesitate. Lightning-shaped veil strikes flew. Joran danced between them, faster than Kale remembered, weaving spells that bent the very air. Lyra tried to activate a shielding ward, but Joran turned it to ash with a snap. Kale's fury flared and the heart answered. Wings of shadow exploded from his back, casting the entire vault in pulsing black light. Runes lit along his arms. His voice thundered, You abandoned your blood. You betrayed what we stood for. Joran grinned. And I thrived because of it? Their clash cracked the very foundation of the vault. Stone collapsed. Scrolls ignited. Magic twisted into knots. At the final moment, Kale struck a blow that should have ended it, but Joran vanished in a shimmer of serpent fire, leaving only his words behind. We'll see each other again, brother. But next time, I won't be alone. The Oath awakens. Kale and Lyra fled Dareth in silence. But something had changed. Kale now knew he was not the last Hollowborn. The coil had a list: names, bloodlines, destinies shaped by a force older than gods. And worse, one of them was his own brother. That night, Kale stared into the flames of their campfire. Lyra sat beside him. What do we do now? Kale answered, voice low. We gather others. Hollowborn or not. Those who resist. He lifted the serpent-marked scroll and burned it. They made an oath of fire and poison. He turned toward the horizon where a storm brewed over black mountains. Then we'll answer with one of shadow and flame. They traveled for 7 days under crimson skies. The land beyond Dareth was known only in whispers as Velmorath, once a lush valley and the seat of the old council of veiled tribes. Now it stood barren, its trees blackened, its rivers poisoned. Whatever the black coil was doing, it was spreading. Kale kept the group moving. He and Lyra now walked as hunted beings. The mark of the Hollowborn had awakened more than just ancient memories, it had summoned enemies from across the world. And yet, it also lit fires in the hearts of the forgotten. On the third night, they reached the ruins of Ether Reach, once the sanctuary of the Veil Scholars. There, beneath the tower cracked open by time, Kale encountered the first of them. The warrior of scales. She stood alone, silhouetted against the moonlight, her cloak made of dragon hide, her blade humming faintly at her side. Her eyes, amber with vertical slits, narrowed as Kale approached. I felt the pulse from Sarith, she said. Did the heart awaken? Kale nodded. And with it, the war. She introduced herself as Thessera of Drakhen, born of the scalebound bloodline, a warrior caste said to carry the memories of dragons. Her people had been betrayed during the Sundering and had hidden in the volcanic reaches of the east. Like Kale, she was Hollowborn. I've been waiting for a sign, she admitted. Now I see it in your eyes. Kale offered her no command, only his truth. The world has forgotten us. But we have not forgotten it. We fight not just for revenge, but for reclamation. Thessera bowed her head. Then I stand with you, Shadowborn. The gathering of Ash. One by one, others came. From the frost-covered north, Erlin the Whisperblade, a blind assassin who could read the veil like braille in the wind. From the sun-scorched isles, Minari, a priestess of the fallen star cult who claimed to hear the Veil's song in her dreams. And from the depths of a ruined prison, bricks, a former war-forged construct infused with a fragment of sentient shadow. Lyra kept their records, drawing maps and symbols from each Hollowborn story. Patterns emerged, ancient prophecies, timelines intersecting, names long erased now aligning again. They called themselves the Hollowborn Rebellion. Their goal: strike the black coil at its core, uncover the serpent's throne, and sever its connection to the corrupted Veil before it could spill fully into the mortal realm. But to do that, they needed a weapon. A true counterforce. The Veil Forge. Thessera spoke of a place whispered in her ancestral visions, Nithrical, the Veil Forge. A mythical crucible where the first Hollowborn had tempered not swords, but destinies. It lay beneath the grave hills, where thousands had once fallen in the wars of shattered blood. Most who entered never returned. But Kale felt it in his bones, the Veil Forge was real, and it was calling to him. They moved swiftly. Upon arrival, the ground trembled. Kale stepped forward alone, his breath steady, as the others waited above. He descended into the darkness, passing rows of statues not of kings or heroes, but of Hollowborn who had tried and failed. At the heart of the forge, he found it, a blade embedded in black crystal, its form ever shifting between steel and shadow. Runes pulsed along its hilt, alive, like veins. It was called Nithral, the Soul Brand. When Kale reached for it, the world broke. The trial of flame and memory. He was no longer in the forge. He stood within his own mind, a plane of infinite mirrors. Each one showed a version of himself, a tyrant, a savior, a monster, a martyr. A voice echoed. To wield the soul brand is to forge your truth. What are you, Kale? Each mirror shattered, one by one, until only a single reflection remained, Kale as he was, but older, scarred, cloaked in fire. The future. A version of himself who had taken the throne of shadow. You will break the world, the reflection said. Or save it by becoming what you swore never to be. Kale stepped forward. I choose neither. I choose to fight. And the soul brand answered. Rise of the Serpent's Legion. As Kale emerged from the forge, blade in hand, the sky cracked. Serpent banners rose across the southern horizon. The Ryan had moved faster than expected. He had summoned a legion of the coil, thousands strong, bolstered by veil-corrupted beasts and Hollowborn who had fallen to promises of dominion. Worse yet, a new figure stood beside the Ryan, cloaked in violet flame, face hidden behind a golden mask. Lyra gasped. That's the one from my dreams. The Oracle of the Deep Coil. A being that didn't speak, it sang. And its song turned the sky black. Kale turned to his allies, his voice calm. This isn't a war of armies. This is a war of essence. He lifted the soul brand, and it flared like a star. Let the serpent come. we will show it what Hollowborn truly means. The first light of dawn crept over the scarred plains of Velmoroth, but the air was thick with an unnatural stillness, as if the land itself held its breath. On one side, the ragtag army of the Hollowborn gathered Kale, Lyra, Thessera, Erlin, Minori, and Brick's heart steeled, eyes sharp, and the soul brand gleaming with quiet power in Kale's hand. Opposite them, the Black Coil's forces amassed like a tide of shadows. Cloaked figures moved silently beneath banners adorned with the coiled serpent, their numbers beyond counting. But what drew the wary gazes most was the figure at their helm, the Oracle of the Deep Coil. Clad in violet flame and golden mask, the Oracle never spoke in words, but sang an eerie lament, a haunting melody that wove through the battlefield like a living thing. The song twisted the veil, warping reality, stirring fear in even the bravest warriors. Kale's jaw tightened. "Brace yourselves," he said. "This is no ordinary fight." The Oracle's song. As the armies surged forward, the Oracle's voice rose in a crescendo that felt like the cry of 1,000 lost souls. The Hollowborn warriors felt the weight of ancient sorrow press upon their spirits. Suddenly, Thessera's dragon sense flared, a shimmer of scales rippled across her skin. "The song, it binds us. It feeds on our fears." Lyra called out an incantation, weaving a protective ward that pulsed with silvery light. "Hold fast. Do not let it drown your wool." Kale gripped the soul brand tighter. The blade thrummed with energy, resonating against the Oracle's lament like a heartbeat in a silent room. With a roar, Kale charged into the thick of the enemy, his blade cleaving through corrupted beasts and shadow-infused soldiers alike. Each strike sent ripples of pure veil energy, momentarily breaking the Oracle's influence on those nearby. Erlin darted through the fray, his blind senses guiding him to key enemy commanders, silently removing threats with lethal precision. Secrets in the shadows. Mid-battle, Kale caught a glimpse of a figure moving through the chaos, a familiar silhouette cloaked in deep crimson. It was the Ryan. The voice of the coil moved like a specter, sowing confusion among the Hollowborn ranks, twisting their fears into nightmares. He spoke coldly, "You fight well, Kale. But this world has no place for the weak-hearted." Kale's eyes blazed violet. "Strength isn't just power, the Ryan. It's the choice to protect, not destroy." Their blades met in a clash of shadows and light, a dance as old as the veil itself. Lyra's revelation. Amidst the chaos, Lyra found herself drawn toward a shattered altar at the edge of the battlefield. The Oracle's song echoed in her mind, but beneath the sorrow lay another voice, a whisper from deep within her own blood. Kneeling, Lyra traced the ancient runes carved into the altar. Suddenly, visions flooded her mind, memories not her own but inherited. A prophecy, the Hollowborn bloodline would either shatter or restore the balance of the veil, depending on a choice made in the depths of Sarith. She gasped, realizing her connection to the Oracle was deeper than anyone suspected. The turning tide. Back at the front, Kale pushed through, his soul brand igniting in a blaze of violet and silver. The Oracle's lament faltered, the golden mask flickering with uncertainty. Seizing the moment, Thessera unleashed a devastating barrage of dragon fire, fracturing the enemy lines. The Hollowborn rallied, their spirits rekindled. But as the oracle's song faded, a chilling silence fell, and from the shadows emerged an ancient beast, the embodiment of Veil corruption itself, the Wraith of Sundering. Towering and ethereal, it roared, shaking the very ground beneath. Kale stepped forward, meeting its gaze. For the future, we fight. To be continued. The battle for Velmoroth had only begun. With the Oracle's true nature unveiled and the Wraith unleashed, Kale and his allies faced a war far greater than they imagined. What sacrifices would be demanded? Who would stand firm when the Veil itself seemed to tear apart? And could the Hollowborn truly shape their own destiny, or were they doomed to repeat the sins of the past? The air trembled with the roar of the Wraith of Sundering. Towering above the shattered plains of Velmoroth, its form was a swirling mass of corrupted Veil energy, half solid, half phantom. Jagged shards of obsidian jutted from its ethereal flesh, glistening with a sickly violet light. Each breath it exhaled twisted reality, distorting the world into shifting nightmare reflections. Kale's gaze hardened as he gripped the soul brand, its pulsating light cutting through the dark veil of despair that clung to the battlefield. Stand firm, Kale commanded, his voice booming across the clamor of clashing forces. Around him, the Hollowborn rallied, their own powers flaring brighter in defiance. The Oracle's true song. Meanwhile, the Oracle of the Deep Coil stood atop a fractured monolith, the golden mask reflecting the chaos below. The eerie lament shifted, transforming from sorrow to a haunting melody of command. Through the song, the Oracle sent tendrils of violet flame that wove into the hearts and minds of the Black Coil soldiers, tightening their fervor and darkening their resolve. Lyra, sensing the subtle manipulation, clasped her head, fighting the disorienting waves. She gasped, the Oracle's song. It's not just power, it's a weapon forged from our fears and hopes alike. Drawing from her ancestral knowledge, she began chanting counter spells, weaving threads of protective veil energy around the Hollowborn ranks, shielding them from the mind's assault. Clash of Titans. Kale charged the Wraith, the soul brand igniting a comet-like trail behind him. Each swing of the blade shattered fragments of the creature's form, revealing glimpses of a tortured past, a being forged from the sorrow and rage of ancient Hollowborn fallen to corruption. The Wraith retaliated with tendrils of shadow and flame, their strikes bending the air and forcing Kale to call upon every ounce of his Veil mastery to parry and counter. Erlin and Thessera coordinated their strikes. Erlin's blades danced through the Wraith's shadows, while Thessera's dragon fire seared its obsidian spikes. Brix fought fiercely, his war-forged body absorbing blows that would shatter any mortal frame. Yet, the Wraith was relentless, fueled by the Dark Veil's unending hunger. Betrayal in the ranks. Suddenly, from the east flank, a chilling cry pierced the din. Kale's eyes flicked towards the sound and horror clenched his heart. One of their own, Minori, stood amid the Black Coil's forces, her eyes glazed, mouth chanting the Oracle's song as a dark staff pulsed with corrupt energy in her hands. Minori. Lyra gasped. The priestess turned slowly, a twisted smile playing on her lips. The song called me home. You could never understand, Kale. The veil's true power lies not in resistance but in surrender. Kale's voice broke with pain and fury. You're one of us. You were supposed to fight with us. Minari's laughter was a sharp blade. I am the Veil's chosen. You are relics clinging to the past. Before they could react, Minari unleashed a surge of corrupted Veil energy, striking Thessera squarely in the chest. The warrior staggered, flames flickering weakly. Kale's fury exploded. You'll answer for this. The shattered echo. Kale surged forward, but the wraith used Minari's attack as a distraction to strike a devastating blow. The ground beneath Kale cracked, sending him sprawling. In the moment of weakness, the oracle's lament reached its crescendo. Reality bent and fractured around the battlefield. Time itself seemed to splinter. Kale found himself caught in a terrifying vision, a shattered echo of the Veil's past. He saw endless cycles of war, betrayal, and destruction, each a mirror reflecting the last. In the vision, the oracle spoke, its voice a soft murmur, every rebellion is a shadow of the first. Every victory, a step closer to oblivion. Kale's heart pounded. Was their fight doomed to repeat history? Or could they break the cycle? Rally of the Hollowborn. Snapping back to reality, Kale roared, the soul brand blazing with renewed light. His voice carried across the battlefield. We fight not just for survival, but for the future. One by one, the Hollowborn answered. Erlin's blades flashed faster, Thessera's dragon fire blazed brighter, Brix's armored form shielded their lines. Lyra, stealing her resolve, unleashed a wave of pure Veil energy, severing Minari's connection to the oracle's song. The priestess collapsed, weeping with remorse and shame. The oracle's retreat. With the tide turning, the oracle's golden mask cracked. The violet flames flickered and dimmed. Its song faded into a haunting whisper. The Ryan emerged from the shadows, face twisted with rage. This is not over, Kale. The coil will rise again, and you will kneel. Kale met his gaze, unwavering. We will stand until the Veil itself unbinds us. The oracle vanished in a burst of violet flame, dragging the Ryan with it. Aftermath and resolve. As silence fell over the battlefield, the Hollowborn gathered their wounded and mourned their lost. The price had been high, but their spirit remained unbroken. Lyra approached Kale, eyes steady. The oracle's song is weakening, but it will return, stronger. Kale sheathed the soul brand. Then we prepare. We learn. And when it returns, we will be ready. Together, they looked toward the horizon where the Veil shimmered, a constant reminder of the power they wielded, and the destiny they must fulfill. The rebellion's camp lay nestled within the twisted roots of the blackened forest, a place where even the Veil's light struggled to penetrate. The Hollowborn had fought to claim this refuge, but now the true battle threatened to come from within. Kale stood on a ridge overlooking the camp, the soul brand sheathed but humming faintly with power. Lyra approached quietly, carrying a leather-bound tome from the ruins of Narrated. "The council wants to meet," she said softly. "They question your leadership." Kale's eyes narrowed. "I've led us through death and betrayal. What more do they want?" "Trust," Lyra answered. "And unity. There are those who fear your connection to the Veil Forge, and to the Oracle's song." The Council of Veilborn. Inside the ancient hall carved from living stone, the council gathered, Thessera, Erlin, Brix, and others hollowborn warriors, scholars, and mystics, each bearing scars of war and secrets heavier than their armor. Thessera's gaze was sharp. "Kale, your power grows, but so does the shadow within you. The Veil Forge blade changes you." Brix nodded slowly. "We have seen warriors fall to the Veil's seduction before. We cannot risk repeating history." Kale's voice rang out. "The soul brand is our hope, not our doom. Without it, the black coil will consume us all." But dissent simmered. From the back, a cloaked figure stepped forward, a newcomer, her face half hidden beneath a hood. "Kale," she said, voice like silk, "power alone will not save us. We need allies beyond the Hollowborn." The stranger's proposal. She introduced herself as Silera, envoy from the Crimson Accord, a secretive coalition of mage clans and warrior tribes who had remained neutral during the Sundering, but now watched the rising darkness with wary eyes. "The black coil threatens the balance of all realms," Silera explained. "Our people possess relics and knowledge that could turn the tide if you prove you can be trusted." Lyra frowned. "How do we know you're not spies?" Silera smiled thinly. "Because if we were, I wouldn't be here. I would have destroyed you long ago." Secrets in the shadows. That night, Kale and Lyra met secretly with Silera beneath a sky veined with auroras. Silera revealed a map ancient, etched on dragon bone marking the location of the Shattered Seal, a forgotten fortress containing artifacts that could bind or break the veil. "Recovering it will force the black coil to retreat," Silera said. "But the path is guarded by traps and veil wraiths, and worse by a guardian known only as the Whispering Shade." Kale felt a chill. The Whispering Shade was legend, a being said to twist minds and hearts, feeding on fear and doubt. A fractured trust. Back in camp, murmurs grew louder. Erlin confronted Kale, voice low but firm. "You trust too quickly. The Veil Forge changed you. The Oracle's song lingers in your mind. Can you lead us without falling?" Kale met his stare. "I am not the man I was." Thessera stepped in. "We must be vigilant, not divided. The enemy is patient. We cannot afford to tear ourselves apart." but the seeds of doubt were planted. The ambush. Before the rebellion could act on Silara's plan, a scream shattered the camp's uneasy peace. Veil wraiths swarmed the outskirts, followed by black coil assassins. In the chaos, the camp was breached. Kale fought desperately, the soul brand a blazing comet. Lyra cast protective wards, but they were overwhelmed. During the fray, Kale was separated from the others, chased through shadowy woods by a figure cloaked in darkness. When he turned, the mask was familiar. The Oracle. The Oracle's choice. The Oracle's voice was no longer a lament but a whisper of promises. Kale, the path you walk fractures the veil further. Join me, and together we can remake the world. Kale's grip on the soul brand tightened. I choose the light between shadows. The Oracle laughed, a sound like cracking ice. Then you shall know true despair. With a swirl of violet flame, the Oracle vanished, leaving behind a single black feather that drifted to Kale's feet. The rising storm. Exhausted and wounded, Kale returned to camp, where the survivors gathered, eyes full of fear and hope. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. We fight not just for us, but for all who dream of dawn beyond the veil. Kale nodded. The battle was far from over. And the veil's echo would shatter again in ways none could yet foresee. The Hollowborn rebellion prepared to journey into the heart of the veil's darkest secret, the domain of the Whispering Shade. The ancient fortress known as the Shattered Seal lay hidden within the veil-warped lands of Eldraith, a place where reality bled into nightmare. Kale stood at the camp's edge, soul brand in hand, eyes fixed on the horizon where a black storm swirled like a wound against the sky. The journey into Eldraith. The path was treacherous, jagged rocks that seemed to shift beneath their feet, forests where the trees whispered secrets in voices only the veil could hear. Each step pulled at their souls, threatening to unravel their minds. Lyra, drawing on her warden's heritage, led chants of protection, her voice weaving threads of light into the suffocating darkness. Thessera's dragon senses kept them alert against the shadows stalking them. Erlen moved silently ahead, scouting the unseen dangers. The first test, the mirror of lost truths. At the fortress gate, they faced their first trial, a massive mirror of obsidian glass that showed not reflections, but fragments of memories and fears. One by one, the Hollowborn saw their pasts and futures twisted. Thessera saw her clan's betrayal. Erlen saw blindness not just of sight, but of purpose. Lyra confronted a vision of herself wielding the Oracle's song. Kale faced his own darkest fear, becoming the hollow god his shadow self had shown him. To pass, they had to accept the pain without surrendering. Kale stepped forward, voice steady, I am not my fears. I am my choices. The mirror shattered. The Whispering Shade revealed. Deeper inside, the air grew colder, heavier. The shadows coalesced into a figure tall, slender, eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. The Whispering Shade. It spoke, its voice like wind through dead leaves, you seek power, yet power demands a price. Are you willing to pay? The shade offered Vision's knowledge of the Veil's deepest secrets, the chance to end the black coil forever, but at the cost of sacrifice unimaginable. Betrayal within. As the Hollowborn debated, a dagger struck from the shadows. Bricks, the Warforged, collapsed, the mark of the black coil glowing faintly on his chest. The shade whispered promises to Kale, sowing doubt, challenging his resolve. The battle for the Soul Forge. A fierce battle erupted between the Hollowborn and the Shade's illusions. Kale wielded the soul brand to sever the shadows, Lyra's wards held the line, Thessera's fire raged. And more. The Hollowborn rebellion stood at the edge of Eldrate, the land where the very fabric of reality had begun to unravel. Black mists coiled like serpents between shattered trees, and the sky wept faint violet sparks. The ancient fortress of the Shattered Seal loomed ahead, its broken spires piercing the gloomy horizon like jagged teeth. Kale tightened his grip on the soul brand, its pulsating light a small beacon against the consuming darkness. Around him, the members of the rebellion readied themselves. The weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily upon their shoulders. "This is no ordinary fortress," Lyra whispered, tracing the runes carved into the nearby stones. The Shattered Seal was built to imprison things worse than death. Thessera's amber eyes glinted with wary fire. "And those things still hunger." The journey through the veil-touched forest. Their path into Eldrate was a trial in itself. The twisted forest seemed alive, whispering secrets and lies. Shadows flickered just beyond sight, and trees shifted subtly when backs were turned. Erlen led the way, his blindness a blessing here. His heightened senses cut through the veil's deception, guiding them with silent confidence. But the forest had a toll. One by one, the Hollowborn felt their memories twist, moments of joy turning to regret, love warped to bitterness. Lyra nearly collapsed, her mind haunted by echoes of the Oracle's song. Thessera's breath quickened as visions of her destroyed clan haunted her steps. Kale's own thoughts were not spared. Faces of lost friends, whispered doubts, the haunting mirror self that had challenged his destiny all swirled in his mind like a tempest. He clenched his teeth, forcing focus. "We fight not just with blades, but with will," he reminded the group. "Keep your minds clear. Our souls are our strongest weapons." The Gate of Memories. At last, they reached the fortress gate's massive obsidian doors carved with serpentine runes pulsing with cold light. Between them stood a giant mirror, polished to darkness. Kale stepped forward, the soul brand's light reflecting eerily on the glass. The mirror did not show their faces. Instead, it revealed fractured memories and futures, distorted and twisted. Thessera saw herself standing over the ashes of her people, hands stained with blood she had not spilled. Erlen confronted his blindness, not just physical, but of his own spirit. Lyra's vision flickered. She saw herself wearing the Oracle's mask, singing the haunting lament. Kale's reflection shattered into 1,000 shards, each a different fate: tyrant, martyr, god, monster. One voice echoed through the mirror: "Face your fears, or be consumed by them." Kale's voice rang out clear, I am not my fears. I am my choices. With that, the mirror cracked, shards falling like dark rain into the heart of darkness. Beyond the gates, the air turned frigid and heavy. The fortress was a labyrinth of shadow and light, corridors twisting impossibly, walls whispering forgotten secrets. Veil energies pulsed like heartbeat rhythms, unsettling even the soulbrand's glow. Then, from the depths of the fortress, the shadows condensed into a figure tall, elegant, eyes glowing with malevolent amber light. The Whispering Shade. Its voice was a sibilant wind through dry leaves. Welcome, Hollowborn. You seek power, yet power demands sacrifice. What price are you willing to pay? The Shade's Temptation. The Shade offered Vision's knowledge of the Veil's origin, secrets to unravel the black coil, but always with a catch. To gain the power to destroy the coil, one must sacrifice memories, or loved ones, or even fragments of their soul. Lyra's eyes filled with tears as she saw visions of losing Kale. Thessera glimpsed a future where her clan was saved, but only by becoming the enemy. Erlin faced a choice between sight and death. Kale alone refused. I will not pay with my soul, he said steadily. I fight with what I have. The Shade smiled, the edges of its form flickering. Very well. Then prove yourself. Battle within the Soul Forge. The fortress shook as illusions exploded into reality. Shadow beasts emerged from the walls, whispering lies and despair. Kale called upon the soul brand, its blade igniting with searing light. Lyra unleashed wards of pure veil energy, creating shields of shimmering silver. Thessera's dragonfire roared, carving fiery paths through the monsters. Erlin's blades danced like ghosts, striking unseen foes. But the Whispering Shade was no mere opponent, it wielded the fortress itself, warping corridors, twisting minds. At a critical moment, Brix, the Warforged, leapt to shield Lyra from a lethal strike, but the blow shattered his arm, sparks flying. Kale shouted, rallying his comrades. Together. The Veil's light is stronger than its shadows. The breaking point. As the battle raged, the Shade unleashed its ultimate weapon, a mirror that trapped Kale's spirit inside, forcing him to relieve every failure, every doubt, every whispered fear. Inside the mirror's prison, Kale faced the darkest version of himself, the hollow god who had once threatened to consume the world. You are nothing without surrender, the shadow taunted. But Kale's resolve hardened. I am more than fear. I am the light in the dark. With a scream of defiance, Kale shattered the mirror from within. Triumph and loss. Emerging victorious but exhausted, the Hollowborn stood amid the crumbled fortress, the Shade's form dissolving into mist. But victory was bittersweet. Brix lay gravely wounded. Lyra held his hand, tears falling. Kale looked toward the horizon, the veil shimmering with uneasy calm. The black coil will return, Kale said softly. but so will we. The final battle unfolded on the scarred plains of Velmoroth, under a sky bruised with twilight. The armies of the Hollowborn and the Black Coil clashed in a tempest of magic and steel, the very ground trembling beneath the weight of their fury. Kale stood at the forefront, Soulbrand blazing like a comet in his hands. Around him, Lyra, Thessera, Erlin, and the remaining rebels formed an unbreakable circle of light, their combined powers weaving a shield against the encroaching darkness. Above them, the Veil roared alive, angry, and watching. The return of Arinder. Just as the tide seemed to favor the Black Coil, a storm tore through the battlefield. From the skies descended Arinder, Kale's old master, his blindfold removed, eyes glowing with an ethereal light. Kale, he called out, voice ringing with ancient power, the Veil itself has answered your call. But the final test awaits. His arrival rekindled hope among the Hollowborn, reminding them of the strength born from sacrifice and wisdom. The shattering of the coil. The Ryan and the Oracle stood atop a dark spire, channeling the corrupted Veil in a ritual that threatened to tear the realms apart. The Serpent's throne pulsed beneath their feet, feeding the surge. Kale charged through the enemy lines, breaking shadows and illusions with each step. The Soulbrand sang in his hand, responding to his will. Reaching the spire, Kale faced the Ryan in a battle that shook the skies. Blades clashed with crackling Veil energy, words exchanged that revealed long-hidden truths of betrayal and hope. Lyra's sacrifice. In the midst of chaos, Lyra confronted the Oracle. The connection between them was deeper than blood, she was the Oracle's forgotten kin, torn between love and duty. To sever the Oracle's song, Lyra sacrificed her own Veil energy, becoming a beacon that disrupted the ritual but left her weakened and vulnerable. Kale caught her as she fell, promising that her sacrifice would not be in vain. The birth of Veil fire. With a final strike, Kale plunged the Soulbrand into the Serpent's throne. A burst of light erupted, the corrupted Veil igniting into Veil fire a new force of creation and destruction. The Black Coil's power shattered, their armies broken and scattered. Epilogue, a new dawn. The Veil settled, transformed by the sacrifice and courage of the Hollowborn. Kale, now a legend, stood beside Lyra and Thessera, watching the dawn break over Velmoroth. The world was scarred, but alive. And the Veil whispered of new stories of hope, of balance, of a future forged by those brave enough to wield the dawn. Title: Veilborn, The Hollow Legacy. Description: in a fractured world shadowed by ancient magic and betrayal, Kale, a forsaken child born under a cursed star, discovers he is one of the legendary Hollowborn, destined to wield the mysterious veils. Power. Guided by a band of rebels, haunted by a dark prophecy, and hunted by the sinister Black Coil, Kale must navigate a realm where reality bends and the line between light and shadow blurs. As old secrets unravel and new alliances form, the fate of the Veil and all realms hangs in the balance. Facing inner demons, epic battles, and impossible sacrifices, Kale and his companions fight not only to survive, but to ignite a new dawn where power is shaped by will, and legacy is forged through courage. Veilborn, The Hollow Legacy is an epic fantasy saga of destiny, rebellion, and the enduring fight to reclaim hope in a world on the brink of oblivion.